For the better part of a century, the NCAA Tournament has been the highlight of the basketball calendar, a drama-filled, legacy-shaping extravaganza that never ever disappoints. Memories, as they say, get made in March. But of all the historic moments that March Madness has produced, and we've explored several of them in this series, none are as incredible as The Shot, Christian Laettner's game-winning heroics in what may be the greatest game in tournament history. If you know anything about college basketball, you know that no team gets more flack than the Duke Blue Devils, largely because of their on-court success, their famously obnoxious fans, and the school's well-earned reputation for elitism. And at least as far as basketball goes, no player did more to put Duke in that position than Christian Laettner, the versatile 6'11" center who was a certified Duke legend and one of the most indelible figures in college basketball history before he hit the shot. Laettner started for the Blue Devils as a freshman, then helped Duke to their 4th ever national championship game as a sophomore. Actually, in a fitting bit of foreshadowing, Laettner delivered Duke's biggest shot that season, drilling a buzzer beater in overtime to lift the Blue Devils over UConn in the regional final of the 1990 NCAA Tournament.
All right, this is interesting. UConn not playing the passer. All right, here is Laettner with the shot, and it scores! And Duke wins!
And what did he do for an encore? He blossomed into one of college basketball's biggest stars. As a junior, Laettner averaged almost 20 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block per game for a Duke team that looked dead set on redemption after getting waxed by UNLV in the previous year's championship game. And sure enough, when the '91 tournament arrived, despite losing the ACC title game, the Blue Devils got their redemption, thanks in no small part to Laettner. Not only did Laettner average 20 points per game through Duke's first 4 tournament contests, but he dropped a team-high 28 in an epic rematch against #1 ranked UNLV in the semifinals, including the 2 free throws that put Duke on top for good with less than 13 seconds remaining in regulation. And he was superb again against Kansas in the championship game, going a perfect 12 for 12 from the free throw line in an 18-point, 10-rebound performance that propelled Duke to the first national championship in school history. For his efforts, Laettner was named the most outstanding player for the Final Four, not to mention the ACC Athlete of the Year. He was a baller, plain and simple, and people hated him. Whether it was how good he was, how he carried himself on the floor, the fact that he was a pretty boy, the fact that he went to Duke, or all of the above, Laettner was college basketball's foremost villain in the early 1990s. Case in point, in 2015, almost a quarter century after Laettner played his last game for Duke, ESPN put out a 30 for 30 documentary entitled I Hate Christian Laettner. But what the haters didn't realize as Duke celebrated its first national championship was that Laettner wasn't done driving them crazy. Not by a long shot. As a senior, Laettner was the most dominant college basketball player in the nation, taking home both the Wooden and Naismith Awards after averaging almost 22 points per game for a Duke team that went 25-2 and didn't spend a single week out of first place on the AP's top 25 poll. In fact, Duke started off their season with 17 consecutive wins. And Laettner was ultimately so impressive as a senior that he was the only college player named to the famous 1992 US Olympic squad, earning a spot on the Dream Team over fellow NCAA standout Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah, that Shaquille O'Neal. Anyway, this Duke team looked unstoppable as the 1992 tournament loomed. With Laettner and a talented sophomore named Grant Hill leading the charge, the Blue Devils beat UNC by 20 points in the ACC title game. And they entered the tournament as the betting favorites and the #1 seed in the East region, with a real shot to become college basketball's first repeat champions in almost 2 decades. Duke bullied its way through the early rounds, with the Blue Devils winning each of their first 3 games by at least 12 points. They were cruising. At the same time, however, so were the Wildcats from the University of Kentucky, a historic powerhouse and the #2 seed in the East region that was as hungry as any team in the nation. See, on account of recruiting violations, Kentucky had been banned from the previous 3 tournaments, which meant that their 1992 reinstatement was the first and last opportunity for the team's 4 seniors to vie for a national championship. And yeah, they were locked in. Much like Duke, Kentucky waltzed through its first 3 games, posting an average margin of victory of 12 points behind their quartet of seniors known as the Unforgettables, plus dominant sophomore Jamal Mashburn. And you know what that meant? Duke versus Kentucky in the East Regional Final. 2 juggernaut teams, each with NBA talent, each helmed by a Hall of Fame coach, going at it for a spot in the Final Four. On paper, this was as compelling as any Elite 8 matchup in tournament history. But what went down that night wasn't just historic, it was legendary. an all-time triumph for Duke, and an unforgettable heartbreak for Kentucky, with Christian Laettner as the main character. Now, as expected, the game was intense from the get-go. Kentucky actually came out in a full-court press. But Laettner, the biggest, most dynamic, most accomplished player on the floor, was unbothered.
Underneath Laettner, he was being fronted by Mashburn, and he gets the basket.
First, he recognizes situations on the floor.
Oh! Terrific pass. Of course, played against his brother Danny in the game against Seton Hall, so this one would be a lot easier. Laettner now has 10 points. He has become the all-time leading scorer in NCAA basketball tournament history.
Yeah, did you catch that? As he helped Duke carve out a first-half lead, Laettner, in his 21st career March Madness game, overtook Elvin Hayes as the NCAA Tournament's all-time leading scorer. Yeah, he was doing his thing. Believe it or not, Laettner didn't miss a shot in the first half. And as the game adjourned for halftime, Duke was in a good spot, up by 5. But this game was about to get turned on its head. With just over 8 minutes to go in the second half, with Duke still in control, Laettner committed what was undeniably the biggest gaffe of his career, inexplicably stomping on Kentucky's Aminu Timberlake after getting fouled.
Sure, Laettner calls for it. There's a double on Laettner. And Laettner kicked it. And they got him. There's a technical on Christian Laettner. Stepped right in his chest.
Now, that was a pretty darn nasty situation. I don't know if he did it on purpose or not.
Yeah, he did.
And with that infamous stomp, which earned him a technical foul and had Kentucky pleading for an ejection, Laettner had not only vindicated his haters, but he had lit a fire underneath the Wildcats. Not long after that foul, in a span of just over 2 minutes, Kentucky erased a 10-point deficit, somehow managing to tie the game up at 81 with roughly 5 minutes remaining.
Kentucky ball. Woods.
And when the buzzer sounded after 40 minutes of play, this game, which had Philadelphia's Spectrum practically on fire, was still tied, 93-93. Overtime. Now at that point, you're probably thinking, yeah, Laettner had a great game, but if he doesn't commit that stupid foul, Kentucky probably doesn't mount that comeback and Duke is already on its way to the Final Four. But Laettner wasn't about to let that egregious mistake define him, or his team's season. As it turned out, his biggest moment of the night was still to come. A moment that is, by many accounts, the greatest in NCAA tournament history. As OT unfolded, the two teams basically went shot for shot, and with less than 15 seconds left on the clock, it was a pair of Laettner free throws that put Duke up by 1. But on the ensuing Kentucky possession, a beautiful drive from Sean Woods put the number 1 seed behind the 8 ball with just over 2 seconds remaining.
7.8 seconds remaining. Woods. Yes!
It was over, right? 2.1 seconds left on the clock, Duke inbounding from the baseline. It was finished. Kentucky had pulled off the upset, and the Blue Devils' pursuit of a second straight championship was donezo, right? Nope. Instead, it was Laettner who called the game.
There's the pass to Laettner. Puts it up. Yes!
Madness. March freaking Madness. What else can you even say? With his team's season on the line, Laettner was as cool as a cucumber, corralling an incredible inbound heave from Grant Hill, putting the ball on the floor, then unleashing a picture-perfect turnaround jumper over Darren Feldhaus to lift Duke to a 104-103 victory. I mean, that was truly one of those rare, miraculous shots where you know in the moment that you just witnessed history. Laettner wasn't going to be remembered for the stomp. He was going to be remembered for the shot. A shot, by the way, that made him a perfect 10 for 10 from the field. He was also 10 for 10 from the line. Yeah, the dude didn't miss a shot all night, finishing with a game-high 31 points. And for the 4th time in Laettner's 4 seasons at Duke, the Blue Devils were headed to the Final Four. But I think you already know how their season ended. After their instant classic stunner over Kentucky, a second straight title felt practically destined for Duke, who snuck past Bobby Knight's Indiana Hoosiers in the Final Four before spanking Michigan's Story Fab 5 in the championship game. With a second consecutive title on the line, by the way, Laettner dropped 19 points, leading his team in scoring in the championship game for a second straight year and cementing his legacy as one of the greatest college basketball players ever. A two-time champion, Laettner finished his Duke career with the all-time NCAA Tournament records for points, free throws made, games played, and games won. And of course, he had 2 overtime buzzer beaters on his tournament resume. 2! Not to mention his consensus National Player of the Year honors in '92. If he isn't the best college basketball player of the 20th century, he's certainly in the top 10. That's why he got his number retired by Duke. That's why he ended up on the Dream Team. And that's why he went third to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the 1992 NBA Draft. And if Shaq and Alonzo Mourning weren't in his draft class, he probably would have gone first. But while Laettner went on to have a fine NBA career, earning an All-Rookie nod and an All-Star appearance over 13 seasons in the association, his most enduring moment, his legacy really, will always be the shot. Because, obviously. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button.